When creating Batman The Long Halloween, Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale had a pretty big responsibility ahead of them. They not only had to create the origin story for Two-Face, but also the broader picture of Gotham had to be painted as it transitions from corruption and gangster violence to the world that we commonly associate with Batman and Gotham, which is a world of freaks and outlandish villains. And I think that transition is a really interesting point that Tim Sale illustrates very well. And that transition is what I would like to look at today, specifically through the artwork of Tim Sale and how he shows Gotham changing from its primal form of gangster violence to the wacky world that we're familiar with. And before I begin, spoiler warning for the comic. If you don't already know the story, there'll be a lot of important plot points expressed throughout this video. If nothing else, this is done overtly through how the character is actually illustrated and colored. When we look at Falcone, he's basically a one-to-one version of many characters in The Godfather where inspiration was taken from. He has a sleek black suit, not many colors, and overall just looks like a normal human, and that contrasts greatly with how the Joker's illustrated. He's got his signature green hair, wild outfits, exaggerated facial features. This is not possible for anyone to have outside of a comic book. Generally speaking, the gangsters are illustrated to take themselves and their work very seriously. They want to hold on to what they have very strongly, but of course, throughout the course of the comic, that grip is loosened and eventually completely let go. The gangsters greatly rely on order in order to keep their power within the city. This expands from the typical corruption, but also order on their districts and order in their families. You can see this in the very opening scene, the spread panel with all the people, as Bruce describes how their power is just so far-reaching within Gotham. This is in direct contrast to the freaks. They thrive on chaos and disorder. Everything they do typically involves some kind of killing or disposal of Gothamites to get their way, and they're not necessarily looking long-term or to keep control within their families and factions. They're looking for short-term gains or just something to entertain themselves. You can see this in the New Year's Eve chapter with Joker. He's about to kill a lot of Gotham's population, just to try to kill Holiday, so he loses that competition. He's willing to lose a lot of the people in the city for not that much inherent gain. He's doing it kind of for the love of the game, but no real long-term goal, and really no short-term goal either. What I think is interesting, though, which Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale have worked together very hard to achieve this, is that contrast between the gangsters and the freaks. The gangsters and the mob families, they operate off a facade. They need to keep that order so that the chaos can continue as they plan and as they profit from it all. The freaks, on the other hand, their primary objective is to cause chaos and to hurt as many people as possible, if that means they get as much money as possible or whatever their short-term goal is. They're really not concerned about that order, so you have that exact swap where the front-facing thing is different between the gangsters and the freaks, even though the ultimate goal of just power and money now is really what's most important to both parties. This two-page spread illustrates it well, all the colorful faces and figures we see with the freaks. Yeah, they're different in their own right, they're different from each other, but ultimately that is the true face of Gotham. That is what the gangsters are. They're kind of freaks. They just pretend that they're not. They pretend that they're high society, and they pretend that the grip they have on Gotham isn't even there to begin with, while the freaks, they come out with it up front, and they're not trying to hide anything. When we look at the downfall of the gangsters that's illustrated throughout this comic, I think what's really coming through is that Gotham's true face is coming out. Like I said, they try to pretend that there's something else than they actually are, but really deep down they're murderers, they're clowns, they're vicious animals, and that's what those Batman villains actually turn out to be in the end, that we all know. Catwoman was inspired by Falcone. Batman was inspired by the underlying crime. Poison Ivy came to be, depending on the origin story, because of the environmental crimes in Gotham. They were all triggered from the underlying issues that were present under the rule of the gangsters. It just came out full-fledged once that kind of predator died out. In other words, Batman was ridding the city of the evil, which were the gangsters, but the gangsters were keeping down those freaks from coming out to begin with. And I think the subplot in The Long Halloween of the gangsters losing their power isn't a story of a fallen empire, but rather one of consequences and true faces being shown. Mostly the true face of Gotham. There's lots of other examples of Tim Sale and Jeph Loeb working together very well to achieve a really great, cohesive, complex murder mystery story in The Long Halloween, but this is just one detail that I thought was really interesting and it stuck out to me, so I wanted to share. If you know any subplots that you're really interested in, or maybe want me to talk about, please comment them below. Thanks for watching.